Papier-mâché is a process of using a flour-based paste to hold together strips of newspaper, strips of paper, and you're going to create a form based on that. You have to have an armature, which is a structure for your papier-mâché. You can't just make something out of papier-mâché. There's got to be something underneath the papier-mâché. So in this tutorial today, I'll be using a balloon. I do have more balloons. You're welcome to look through the mysterious bag of balloons that I have. If they're in here, they probably haven't been touched by anybody else in terms of somebody trying to blow it up and throwing it back in the bag, but no promises. If I get sick and die from this, I'll let you know. So papier-mâché paste uses flour, water, and glue. You can do it with just flour and water, but I like to add a little glue just to make sure. I only have a couple of good containers, so I would suggest that any group working on papier-mâché that we maybe combine tables together to try to create paste as few times as possible. So you're going to use flour. Make sure this can be seen well. And we're going to spray some plain white glue in there. Theoretically. Papier-mâché, you will notice, is not an exact science. You are going to mix this until it looks right. So now we're going to come over to the sink. And we're going to put some water in. We're just going to put in a little bit at first. We're going to use a palette knife to mix it up. Now notice right now, it looks like a dough. We don't want dough, we want paste, so we're going to need to add more water. Now it's starting to get more like a paste. However, this is still really thick. It smells lovely, doesn't it? It smells okay today because it's just flour and water, but imagine in a couple days from now. Aren't you glad you volunteered to video? Papier-mâché is not for people who are afraid of getting their hands dirty. This will end up with some filthy, nasty hands. Is it funny? Okay, so now I've got kind of a goopy paste consistency that should work. When I start to use it, if I notice it's too thick or too thin, I can add more water or more flour as needed. I'm going to use strips of newspaper. There's plenty of newspaper. Newspaper has a grain to it. If you tear it a certain way, you tear it up and down, you get perfect strips. If you try to tear it across, it's still going to go to the grain, and it's going to tear that way. You can't tear it that way. So you're going to tear it going up and down. If your strips are too long to be comfortable working with, you can tear them in half. What you'll do is you'll run it through the paste, and then you'll use your fingers to get most of the excess off. Okay, so it's got some paste on it, but it's not goopy. Notice, my hands are getting dirty. That's what papier-mâché is. I will put it across my armature and smooth it out. If there's too much glue, you'll want to try to wipe it off or just put more newspaper on. If it's so soaking wet that it isn't going to dry easily, then you want to get some off of it. So I'm going to continue going. Each strip should overlap a little bit with another strip. You don't want to put them on just completely separate. Smooth it out as you go. Once you finish a layer, you will want to do a couple more layers. I'd say at least 3 layers of papier-mâché. And as much as possible, you need to let them dry at least a little bit before going to the next. When you do another layer, put the strips on a different direction from the way you originally started going, until you have completed a full layer, and then another layer, and then another layer. To dry, it must be, the papier-mâché cannot be on a surface when it's drying, because if it's down on the table to dry any part of it, then that part is not going to dry, and it's going to get moldy. And when it's moldy, we can't keep it as part of our artwork. You'll have to cut it out. So if you're using, for instance, a balloon, you are probably going to need to tie a string onto the end. You're going to need to tie a string onto the end, and then we'll start by putting them up. We'll tie them up above the sink over there. If you're doing something that's flat, don't papier-mâché the bottom. If the bottom eventually needs to be papier-mâchéed, you're going to have to leave it blank for now, and then tomorrow when the top is dry, flip it over and do the bottom. Does that make sense? Your armature must be complete before you can really put papier-mâché on, because notice, are strips of newspaper with papier-mâché paste going to do anything by themselves? You've got to have that structure underneath. It does not have to be a balloon. You can use crumpled newspaper. You can use cardboard. You can use anything else that you have an idea to use. There are some containers around the room, for instance. If you wanted to use this, we would put some plastic wrap or something over it, and then you could papier-mâché on top of the plastic wrap, and when it dries we can remove this, and then you have that form still there. So there are lots of options. If you find something that's the right shape, as long as it's not like technology, we can probably find a way to use it. Are there any questions about papier-mâché? Okay, you guys can go ahead and head back to your seats. Wherever you need to work today, get started.